Jumbo and good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Safari Mack in Africa, where I'm your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. For those who are joining me from last week, you will recall we are continuing our expedition through Africa to uncover a group of animals which have been commonly called the Big Five. Today, we finish up the rhino, and be sure to stay tuned at the end of the episode, not only for the reveal of our next animal, but a special conservation conversation update. But if you're joining me for the first time, welcome. If you haven't done so, though, be sure to check out my other videos, which you'll find the links to down in the description below, along with my email address for those who have questions. And be sure to check out my Facebook page. And as always, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button so you can stay tuned for more updates as well as special content. With that said, let us continue. If you recall, we ended last week's episode with the rhino, talking about how in Africa they have been revered through art, especially with the golden rhino of Mapungubwe, which was an ancient kingdom in the Middle Ages of what we now know as Great Zimbabwe. Let's continue our journey with the rhino today, but talk about the wild things about rhinos. First of all, while rhinos don't have exactly the best sense of sight, they have a really good sense of smell. And so this rhino here is actually sniffing a pile of rhino dung. Now, the reason why he's doing this is because so sensitive is their sense of smell that they can tell the identity and health, even the sex of a rhino, all because each rhino produces a different kind of odor. Each odor is unique. So when he comes to a pile of rhino dung and sniffs it, he can tell who else is in the area, even if there are ladies that are ready to become moms. Now, a common sight that you would see with rhinos is these magnificent multi-ton creatures giving a ride to birds, whether it's egrets or more commonly tick birds. Now, why do these birds hang around with these animals? It's a form of symbiotic relationship, which is another way of saying each does something that both will benefit. So in this case, because the rhino can't really do anything about the bugs or other parasites that may get lodged within his ears or around his nostrils, the tick birds actually do him a favor and pick those areas clean of parasites. And in return, the rhino gives the bird a little bit of a ride as well as some form of safety. But the bird can also give the rhino a form of safety as well, simply by making certain chirps that alerts the rhino to whatever danger is in the area. Now, in zoos or wildlife parks, or what I like to call in human care, white rhinos are considered to be a little bit more easier to breed than black rhinos. This may be because simply, as I mentioned in the previous episode, white rhinos are a little bit more sociable than the black rhino. However, thanks to conservation groups and dedication, a number of zoological settings across the world, like Chester Zoo, which is located in the United Kingdom, they've had some good success in breeding black rhinos in human care to keep them alive for the next generation. But now, if you take a look at the white rhino and the black rhino, they're not really white or black. The story goes that when Europeans discovered them, the word wide, which is spelled W-Y-D, that was what people in Africa, especially in the language of Afrikaans, would call the first kind. But now, for some reason though, that got mistranslated and the Europeans gave them the name the white rhino. And then the black rhino, just, I guess, as a way of vice versa, just to tell the two apart. But like I said, the white is more because of the broad lip for the white rhino. But another unusual wild thing about black rhinos, they've also been called the hook-lipped rhino. But now another great stunning feature about the rhinoceros, especially a really great historical look, is their horn. But now this isn't a real horn. A real horn is more made out of bone. Now this horn really is a giant fingernail slash hair because it's basically the same material that you would find your fingernails and your hair, which is called keratin. Imagine if we had these kind of features. Just imagine how much we would have to spend for a pedicure. Now, of course, the horn, though, it does make them look pretty dangerous and pretty wicked. Like, nobody would want to mess with them, right? Unfortunately, it doesn't really protect them from poachers. These are the same people that kill animals illegally for parts such as skins or other features. Unfortunately, the rhino has been persecuted a lot simply for the value of its horn. In fact, sadly, back in 2011, a subspecies of black rhino, which was called the western black rhino, sadly was declared extinct in 2011 due to poaching. But it gets worse. Rhinos all over the world, not just Africa, have been poached for their horns, especially to be sold in the underground market, especially in Asian markets, where in Asia they believe that the horn of a rhino makes a form of medicine. Although, really, there's absolutely no scientific proof that that actually works. But as I mentioned, unfortunately, the western black rhino was declared extinct in 2011. Thankfully, there are a few other subspecies left, which would include the eastern black rhino and the south central black rhino. But the white rhino, there are two kinds. The southern, which you see more commonly in zoos, and then there is the northern. This is the northern white rhino. Unfortunately, this is a critically endangered species. In fact, just take a wild guess as to how many of these animals are left. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Unfortunately, there are only said to be 2 females left in the entire world, and they are constantly being watched by armed guards 24/7 just to make sure that no poacher kills the last 2 of these magnificent animals. It really is a sad outcome for the northern white rhino. But now, thankfully, there is still hope for all rhinos. One form of hope has been simply bringing up awareness for these creatures. Keeping them alive in zoos or wildlife parks has also kept them safe. And thanks to conservation groups, they're continuously breeding these magnificent creatures to keep them safe from extinction. But now, how do we keep them safe in the wild? Thankfully, many people are being trained to keep these animals safe from poachers or other hunters that want to kill them simply to take their horn away. Now, recently, an all-women's group has been formed to help protect these creatures, and it's starting to prove to be a major success. Now, like I said, it might be too late. For some species, it might be too late. But wait a minute. Maybe not so much for the northern white rhino. What do I mean? Be sure to stay tuned after this episode for our first conservation conversation, the northern white rhino. Also, now that we're coming to an end with the rhino, I'd like to announce that next week we will go and meet one of the most iconic of animals, the African elephant. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all the time I have left for today. But once again, as always, thank you for your continued support. It means so much to me. As always, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button so you can stay tuned for more information. Be sure to check out my Facebook page, and be sure to send me an email if you have questions about animals in general. But I'd like to hear from you. What do you think of the series so far? Be sure to send me an email and tell me what you think. Until next week, this is Safari Mack. I'll see you out there in the wilds of Africa. But be sure to stay tuned for our first conservation conversation. I'll see you in a little bit.